Hi guys, I'm a forester here. I've been carrying this Northwoods Madison Barlow now for a couple of months, and I think it's time that I give you my thoughts on it. But first, I'll give you a couple of size comparisons to other knives, and here's one that you've seen before. This is my GEC Model 73. Now these two knives, the Barlow is definitely the larger knife. I bought these two knives at the same time from knivesshipfree. I've reviewed the 73 first, and I'll put a link to that video below. I would say it's the prettier of these two knives, but the Barlow is the more functional knife. Now the other knife that I want to compare the Barlow to is the Kershaw Skyline. The Skyline's a knife that's very familiar to many of you. The Skyline has a 3-inch blade, and it makes for a nice comparison. I think I generally divide knives into those under 3 inches and those with a blade over 3 inches. The Madison Barlow is a more slim looking knife, but the blade is slightly longer at around 3 1/4 inch. The handle's around 4 1/4 inch. Now the knife weighs 3.2 ounces and it's less than an ounce heavier than the Skyline. To me, that's not enough even to notice. Now the Madison Barlow is a pleasure to carry and use. I usually carry it in this sheath that came with it. The sheath is great for protecting it from scratches as well as keeping pocket lint out of it. I've enjoyed carrying this knife for the past couple of months, I think for two main reasons. One is that it's just very easy to open because of the light tension on that back spring. I'd rate it a 4 or 5 on a 1 to 10 scale. The other thing is that it just fits very well in my hand. Now I have large hands, but that handle is a little over 4 inches long, and so that gives me a little bit of room to play with. I'll move on to quality of construction, and one thing that I look for first is centering of the blade, and I think you would agree that that blade is spot on, perfectly centered. Now the handle scales are made from a native hardwood, that's Osage orange. I think this side is actually a little more attractive. It shows more of the grain of the wood and has more character. Okay, one thing that I look for in quality of construction is how these layers fit together. The handle scales, the brass liners, and that back spring, and they're very smooth to the touch. That's a sign of quality. Okay, one thing that I look for, and this is a criticism that I have of this knife, is how well the wooden handle covers and that bolster fit together, and there's a slight gap in this corner right here, and I'm going to give you a close-up shot as I can, and I think you can see that. Now that's not a major thing to me, but it is worth mentioning because this knife is not cheap. You pay a premium for it. Now besides the gaps, my only other criticism in the knife is the varying depths of these pins that hold the handle scales together. Two of them, this one here and this one, you can tell are flush with the wood. This one's slightly indented, and this one is greatly indented. And it's the same on both sides. I think you can see that. Two are flush, one slightly indented, and this one right here is really inset. This might be out of necessity, but it does look a little wonky to me, I have to admit. Here's a picture of the Osage orange tree and the leaf and the fruit. The Texas artist who drew this is Robert O'Brien. He's done a good bit of work for me over the years drawing different native trees. Now the tree grows to around 50 to 60 feet tall. This is a distribution map of it. The original natural range of it is in Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. That should be a different shade of green, but I'm just not sure how well that shows up over the internet. But you can tell it's been planted over most of the Midwestern and Eastern states. It hasn't quite made its way to Minnesota or Maine yet, though. Here's a website that has a lot of information about wood properties, and Osage orange is known for having the highest specific gravity of any native hardwood, and it's one of the most decay-resistant native woods. It has the highest BTU value of any native wood, and so it makes excellent firewood. It's commonly used for fence posts, archery bows, musical instruments, and small specialty wood items like knife covers. Moving on to the blade, I would say it's a non-traditional blade shape for a Barlow knife. That might be why it's called a Madison Barlow. It's a drop point blade, and it has this long straight edge and belly at the very end. The material is made from 1095 carbon steel. It came from the factory with a perfect finish, no scratches on it at all. Now I like this long pull on the blade instead of just a short nail nick. It makes it very easy to open. Also want to show that there's no writing on the blade on either side at all, and I like that. The only writing is on the tang of the blade. On one side it says Northwoods, and on the other side it says USA. Now I haven't touched up this blade at all. I have used it a good bit. I'm not going to do a paper cutting test, but I can tell you that it has a working edge on it, but it could be sharper, so eventually I'll put it on my wicked edge. Growing up, most boys carried a Barlow knife, but they were generally small clip point Barlows made by companies like Old Timer or other inexpensive brands. This Northwoods Madison Barlow sets a new standard for Barlow knives for me. I'll enjoy carrying it. It's a real keeper. Y'all take care.